Hi, I'm U.S. Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, and this is The Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
And I'm Sophie Delquier.
Our guest today is U.S. Senator Kevin Cramer from North Dakota. This is a state of which President Theodore Roosevelt said, "If it had not been for my years in North Dakota, I never would have become president of the United States." Did you know that, Sophie?
I didn't know that.
The state has a lake, Lake Sakakawea, which has more shoreline than the California Pacific coast.
Really?
Yes.
No.
Here's something that should come
Hold
as
on.
It's serious.
Really?
Yeah, it's got over 1,000 miles, I believe, and Cali has like 850, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, and it's man-made. It's pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
This one should come as no surprise. It holds the Guinness World Record for the most snow angels made simultaneously in one place.
That's fun.
And the previous record was like 3,700, and they got 8,962 people to do it at the same time.
Wow.
So let's hear from someone who has spent a whole lot of time there as chairman of the state Republican Party, tourism director, economic development director, public service commission member, House member, and now United States Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. Senator, you travel a long way to get to Washington from North Dakota, but you actually have a famous ancestor that traveled even a bit further.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, he went by boat. Yeah. So I actually have three ancestors that came over on the Mayflower.
Nice.
But the most famous one being William Bradford, the governor of Plymouth Colony, and the great, really the great documenter. He documented the entire voyage, even pre-voyage, a couple of decades
after that.
He
wrote a book about it.
He actually, it was put into 2 volumes of a book called Of Plymouth Plantation, really just his journals that were put into that form. And it's funny, I've been reading them. I journal them as I read them, and every time I reread, I find new things that are fascinating about my 10th great-grandfather.
Wow.
Do you know who the other passengers were?
I do. James Chilton, who was the oldest person on the Mayflower, actually never made it to land. He died on the boat in port. His wife died about a year later. So they were the oldest couple on the Mayflower. Her name is unknown, or at least it's disputed.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, they were the oldest, and of course, William Bradford remarried after he got here. His wife died as well on the boat, but he remarried after he got to the new country, and that would be my 10th great-grandmother. And yeah, it's been really cool to learn all of that. Also, I mean, 4 generations later, I have a 6th great-grandfather whose wife was in direct descendancy to the Mayflower. And he was one of the first people that died at Bunker Hill in the very first battle of the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
So Jabez Cleveland was my 6th great-grandfather.
It takes some real work to trace that back. I was curious because I actually have a couple people who came over on the Mayflower, so I went to see if we were cousins possibly last night. We're not.
Really?
We're not, but, shipmate travelers.
Yeah, it's a pretty small group. It's a pretty small group.
Well, let's talk about something else colonists brought over. In 1622, we're just warming up here, they brought over from England honeybees. And if you don't think North Dakota is sweet, listeners, it is the largest honey producer in the U.S. and has been for 19 years
I'm really
in
impressed.
a row.
I'm impressed you know that. Yeah, it is. It's funny because, of course, you wouldn't think of bees as surviving 40
Not at all.
Right? 40
The coldest day
degrees
of my
below zero.
life was spent in North Dakota.
Yeah, well, that's can be said of a lot of people. And actually, of course, they don't keep them in North Dakota. They move them to the south. In many cases, Texas, California. Yeah. So they spend, like a lot of North Dakota farmers, they spend the winters down south, and then they bring the bees back up.
I was really curious
spring.
about that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So it's a big thing in your state.
It is. We are the number one producer, like you said, have been for 19 years. It's part of our culture, obviously, and we also raise sugar beets. Speaking of sweet, but honey's the natural for sure.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So what are some other things that you do in North Dakota, Senator? What is a typical, daily routine for you in the state, and then also here in Washington?
Yeah. So, I was North Dakota tourism director in a previous life. That's a lot like being Walt Disney, actually. And it's the most fun you can have at work. So I love my state. I will say this, at the age of 62 with 6 grandchildren and still a 16-year-old son at home that plays lots of soccer, they pretty much occupy every free moment, and both by choice and the fact that they all live in Bismarck. So I get up very early. Both Chris and I, my wife Chris and I, are early risers. So we get up real early in Bismarck and spend a lot of time before the next, sort of group gets up. But we have a home on the Missouri River, on a bay on the Missouri River with a nice little beach and swimming area and boating. And so we do a lot of things right there. It's my favorite destination.
Wow.
And so I like that. But we also have the advantage of being a small state. Our founders were geniuses when they created the Senate, right, with two United States senators in every state. I have a grand total of about 780,000 constituents. So I get the opportunity as a former tourism director and state elected official. I still drive around the state a lot.
That's great.
And know everybody and get to know people. And it's one of the blessings of coming from a small state.
Now, you mentioned soccer. Speaking of soccer,
Yeah.
I think you put some work in, and might be one of the things that help prepare you for Congress.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah,
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I was a soccer referee. One of those funny things where when I was very young, my dad was a baseball umpire, and so I became a baseball umpire. I love baseball, and I did a lot of umpiring in high school, college, and after that, and did some college umpiring. And but then when I got into politics, didn't have time necessarily, and then I got into soccer refereeing. And the reason I got into soccer refereeing is because my daughters, when they were young, they got to junior high age, and I said, you guys, there's always a problem getting referees. You can't have a game without a referee. I think you owe it to the game to become a referee. I'll go with you to training. So I went with the training, and since I went through it all, got certified. I bought a uniform to help out, and before you know it, I'm doing high school and NCAA men's soccer.
My goodness!
What am I doing? Love
What
it.
keeps you in better shape, the umpiring or the soccer?
Oh no, the soccer. The soccer referee. It is rigorous. It is several miles a game. We do lots of games, and no question. But as a very wise referee told me early on, you do not referee to get in shape. You get in shape so you can referee.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I did, but it's great, to your point, it's great preparation for this job, because in a soccer match, especially youth soccer, which is still the heartbeat, in my mind, you're out on that pitch, and you got all these athletes who grew up playing the game, and then a whole bunch of parents who know nothing about the game, but they're all convinced that you're the dumbest person in the room. So it's just like being in the Senate, right? Everybody else is way smarter than the senator.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. And you face a lot of soccer moms, and I still do.
Yeah.
Now you stay very active. I mean, is that always how it's been? You clear out your own snow. You do your own yard work.
Goodness gracious, you guys! No wonder the FBI is screwing everything up. They've been out watching me. So
there is an internet out there.
Well, yeah, I do. That's therapy for me. Yard work. In fact, one of the greatest disappointments for me was when my wife came to me and said, "I'm hiring somebody to do the lawn," and because I'm not home enough, right? Well, I got that duty back, and then this year, I even got a little John Deere tractor for my bigger yard, and Chris was mowing quite a bit. And when I'd get home, I'd say, "Is it okay if I do it this weekend?" And but now our son does it, and so I just sit back and watch and try to not give him my opinion too much.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I do. I do move my own snow, and in landscape, I can't walk by a weed without pulling it. That's just to me, that's therapy.
It was big news around here a little while ago. A little injury. You want to breaking news? Let everybody know how you're doing. Is it
I'm
good?
doing great.
I'm hoping
So
it's great.
so
'cause
it
you seem
is.
great.
Tell
It
us
was
what
really
happened.
great. So I was moving some rocks down on my beach. We have a lot of riprap around the bay, and then we have the sand beach, and I was just it's like weeds. Rocks are like weeds to me. So I move them, or I just make another inch, by moving the rocks. So one really heavy one, big one, slipped and crushed my finger, two fingers, and tore the tip off of one, and then went in. The doctor wanted to amputate, and I said, "Nah, there's a lot of flesh there. Let's hang on." So he said, "Okay, I can get my team in here, and we can do surgery, unless you want to do it local." And I said, "Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world." I mean, here it just injured myself. I'm not going to miss it. You mean I can watch it? Sure. So anyway.
No way.
Yeah, I got video if you want to see it. I
mean, if you want to bring it up, I'll
yeah,
look.
actually, I won't. I can show it to you. It's really. You sure you want to see it? It's not
Yeah,
everybody's
I mean,
anxious to see it.
I've watched some medical TV during dinner.
Oh, do you? Oh, yeah.
It's
okay.
not my preference, but
I love it. No, I love it. So
Actually, growing up, when my mom would go out, for an event or something, leave my brother and I at home, instead of watching the Disney Channel, we would literally watch Discovery Health and
Oh, wow.
watch tumor operations.
I love that.
Weird kids. Weird kids.
Yeah, that's a little
see if
weird.
we
but,
have some flashbacks here.
I'm just looking here about what might be kind of fun to watch for you guys.
So
this
you
is a pretty
really,
good one.
I mean, you decided not to go under. You
Here
did
we
local
go.
anesthesia.
Yeah, and then he wanted to amputate a couple fingers or at least one finger, and I said, no,
Oh
let's-
my goodness, you've got the video playing right now. Do you see that,
Dr.
Sophie?
Dibbledocks is
Yeah,
giving
so
an ex-
listeners, it's graphic. It's definitely graphic.
This is, yes.
Ooh, it's getting closer.
Wow.
grinding down that bone. But I said, won't the flesh, come back? Oh yeah, he said it'll regenerate if you want, if you want to do it, we can try it, and if later you still want a faster recovery, we can cut it off again. Well, later, a few weeks later, I came back. He said, you'd be able to use it a lot quicker if I cut it off. I said I couldn't use it for anything if you cut it off. Anyway, all of that said, I said, no, let's give it time. I only need it for shaking hands. I'm good for now. And so he came back. Now, as you can see, I've got almost my entire finger.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
it looks
bends.
amazing. You look
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I had to give up the NFL quarterback thing I was aiming for, and then the whole hand, modeling thing. was out
Wow.
the window.
As quarterbacks, they don't let you mow your own lawn, so
Is that
it's
right?
probably for the
Oh,
best.
good. Phew, I dodged that bullet then.
Speaking of being here, getting injured at home,
Yeah, we could do this all day.
Yeah, right.
what is your favorite part of this job, though?
Oh gosh, by far my favorite part of this job is the public itself. So like doing this podcast, as you can tell, I'm pretty comfortable doing it. I do a lot of talk radio, a couple hours a week at home. Talk
Okay.
radio town hall.
Yeah.
I don't allow the hosts to filter any calls. I just take them all.
Nice.
About half of them come from Minnesota and South Dakota. But I still, well, we don't get to talk to our senators, especially the Minnesotans. They always complain. Our senators, we've never met our senators. Anyway, so it's the public. It's whether it's showing up at the Ace Hardware store or Sam's Club or
Yeah.
the grocery store.
Not sponsored, folks.
Yeah, no, I love. Yeah, I love them. I just enjoy getting around the state.
We have a note that in the House you held the most town halls of any member.
Yeah, that's.
And
I get Legistorm said that. Yeah, they follow. They tracked that for a number of years, and I was always number one in town halls. I like town halls. I like people.
Yeah.
And here's what I've learned about the public: when you're transparent with them, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt when they know you screwed up. You know what I'm saying? There's sort of a grace that comes with that,
Yeah,
and
knowing that you're human.
right,
Yeah.
a real person. And so, I don't know. And plus, like I said, I enjoy them.
And the authenticity. I'm huge on the authenticity.
I totally agree.
Our goal with this podcast is really to let people outside the Beltway, kind of get to know our senators. Now, we are kind of inside the Beltway and insulated here.
Sure.
Now, when you talk to the people back in North Dakota, what are they telling you? What's the word on the street outside of Washington?
Yeah, mostly it's please leave us alone. That's really, probably the most. And so they're very independent, spirited, and independent-minded people. Obviously, it's the center of the North American continent.
Yeah, that's a bit of trivia.
Yeah, it is.
Go
It
ahead.
is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we have a monument to prove it. Yeah, Rugby, North Dakota, center of North American continent. But so and very rural, as you pointed out. So that independence, but they're also self-reliant. They grow their own food. We grow enough food for lots of people out beyond our boundaries. We grow a lot of energy for the growing economy of our country. But we also like a lot of government close to us. We have a lot of townships and school districts and like a lot of rural areas. And so they like their local government a lot and are very appropriately suspicious of federal government. Right now, the big things really are the cost of things, the cost of stuff, including the cost of money, the double whammy of high inflation and high interest rates, and the interest rates not really seemingly bringing down the inflation much is really problematic for people. So that's their biggest frustration right now, I think.
And again, this isn't you talking. This
No.
is you saying what they're
Oh
telling you.
no, it's me listening. Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, people feel it.
Yeah, they feel it. You know, there's this old saying. I'll be gentle. You can't urinate down my back and tell me it's raining. You know, and I think for a long time the Biden administration has been trying to convince people the economy's great. Just listen to me carefully. The economy's great. You really aren't hurting. Oh, really? You know,
Right,
tell that to
right.
my checkbook when they're filling their gas tank or filling their grocery cart, or they can't buy the house that they wanted to buy, or remodel, or buy a used car for that matter. So you know, people know,
Yeah.
they know what's going on.
Well, you're working on some big issues here.
Really?
And one of the things one of your big accomplishments here, which I didn't realize that you were, the driving force behind this in the Senate and that you really did this. I was working off the Hill and I was so excited about the Space Force.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So I'm super excited to hear you talk about that. You established the United States Space Force. You met with President Trump to discuss how important it was and you advocated for it. Tell us about, the Space Force, what it does, why it's important to you.
Sure. So interesting. It really was President Trump and Vice President Pence who were big space advocates. And they approached me. I as a
Okay.
freshman member, I got on the Armed Services Committee. I have a couple of really important Air Force bases in North Dakota, important guard units in North Dakota. And they approached me and said, would you be willing to champion a Space Force in this first NDAA, my first National Defense Authorization Act? And I thought to myself, I said, well, why me? Why would you? Well, everybody else has something else that they feel strongly about. And I said, well, it's funny you say that because I actually have a space radar station in North Dakota, and we have an aerospace school at the University of North Dakota. We have astronauts that have, several astronauts from North Dakota, including some that were trained at UND. We have NASA programs at the University of North Dakota. I said, I'd kind of love to do that. So I gladly took that mantle, but it was a great team effort. The vice president was very helpful in helping me recruit supporters on the committee and beyond. The president was a great cheerleader. It was so funny. So, the president wanted to have a separate force, like the Air Force or the Navy. But what we came up with was a force within the Air Force, much like the Marine Corps is in the Navy. But then it was really setting up a force that could be successful as opposed to one that would be ridiculed, because there were a lot of skeptics. I mean, some of my early amendments to try to make sure that for example, that the Chief of Space Operations would be a permanent member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not just a situational member, and would answer to the Secretary of the Air Force, not to the Chief of the Air Force. Those things pass on by one vote, and yet when it got all done, we end up with the Space Force. And I thought to myself, wow, this kid from Kindred, son of a rural electric lineman, comes to the United States Senate and as a freshman gets to lead this charge. But I was more fortunate than I was gifted in the sense that they handed it to me, asked for my help. I think I'm pretty good at getting along with people. I'm pretty good at building alliances.
We'd say so.
Yeah. And but that said, you have to have a compelling case. And the compelling case is, while not everybody believed it at the time, it's almost universally understood today. And that is that space really is, at least for now, the final frontier in the sense that it's a war-fighting domain where we have been dominant as a country, as a nation for decades, but others are rapidly catching up, and largely catching up because they've either stolen our technology or they borrowed it and they've advanced it much faster than we have. And so we are so dependent on space every single day, whether it's getting cash out of the ATM or GPS for our map systems. There's just so much. If we didn't have it, we'd miss it in a big way.
I think a lot of people remember the announcement of the Space Force and seeing that, but they may not be familiar with where it is today. Or let's even take a step back. Can you just explain on a basic level to our listeners, some of them aren't even teenagers yet, what Space Force is and what's the point?
Yeah, so the whole point of a service of any type, whether it's the Air Force or the Marine Corps, they have the service is to recruit, train, and equip a force to defend whatever it is, whether it's the seas or under the seas or the land or the air, in this case space. Why does space need defending? Well, it needs defending because there are assets in space that add tremendously to our quality of life and our standard of living, and frankly, to our military. While it's not all military, a lot of it is. And by military, I mean intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. The satellites in low Earth orbit, or the satellites in the geosynchronous orbit, or in the mid Earth orbit. All of those satellites play an integral role in our communications. In again, like I said earlier, all kinds of telecommunications and IT, information technology sharing. And like I said, weapon systems as well. Kill chains is one of the terms you hear a lot from the military. The ability of a ship to know where a missile needs to go to assist Marines somewhere, or a ground-based missile, or for that matter, B-52 bombers out of Minot, North Dakota, need to hit the mark in Syria. You're relying on a lot of communications to connect in a quick time.
You brought up a really good point that I actually, this is an issue that I'm passionate about, and I didn't put two and two together with the Space Force, and it's really the theft of intellectual property and our, technological patents. And, oh my gosh, of course, a ton of those pieces of equipment, that we have patents on are in space.
Yes.
So it is important to defend that from other countries.
Well, and see, there's not a lot of space law. There is some, and there is a space treaty. Probably needs to be updated. Another area that we don't think a lot about until we think about the questions you're raising right now. And why does space need defending? Well, it needs defending because up until recently, space has largely been, a defended domain. But now some of our adversaries have more offensive type of capabilities in space. And why would they have those? Well, they might have those because they want to take out a satellite. And they might want to take out a whole bunch of satellites. Space is also an area where the private sector has led the charge for us. I mean, you'll see no greater public-private partnership, particularly, well, really pretty much anywhere, but particularly in the military, than you'll see in space, because we don't even need to develop. NASA, for example, obviously has, used to be a rocket launcher. Now NASA facilitates all kinds of rocket launching. Same with Space Force and Space Command. And that is that you take entities like Blue Origin, SpaceX, of course, the obvious most prominent leader in payload, carrying payloads to space.
Sure.
But for those innovative, private sector leaders, we wouldn't be as competitive as we are and dominant as we are.
Let me ask what may sound like a basic and most likely dumb question, but it seems like we got out of the governmental space travel with NASA and let the private industries take over almost as a competition, as you were saying. What are the members of Space Force doing? Are they going up into space, and how are they getting
So
there,
that's a really great point, right? Because we think of space, we think of NASA, we think of manned space travel.
I think Star Trek.
You think, well, as do I. And can we just admit Captain Kirk is still, he's still Batman in space?
Pretty dang cool.
Yeah, pretty dang cool. It's funny because William Shatner actually had strong opinions about Space Force and how the officers ought to be, what the officers ought to be called. Because remember, he's Captain Kirk.
Wow.
And so he wanted the naval officer regime. It's not that. Anyway, but he did advocate for it.
Okay.
But that said, yeah, you're right. You think of Star Trek, or you might think of Buzz Aldrin and all that, and our famous astronauts, Alan Shepard. So John Glenn, obviously. So you have that. But Space Force is less about manned space travel. That's still a NASA thing, and the private sector. It's more about communications, satellites, protecting those satellites. I want to be careful, but sort of that whole infrastructure of space, more about that and less about manned space
So it's
travel.
not something we have to physically send people up anymore. I mean, we're
Not generally
technologically
speaking,
okay.
yeah.
Where are other parts of the world? Because I think in many Americans' mind, we still rule. It's kind of like America. We've got space.
Yeah, although remember that for the last several years, American astronauts had to catch a ride with Russian cosmonauts.
It's huge. My dad actually ran the NASA Goddard's Visitor Center over in Greenbelt, Maryland, while I was growing up.
Well, Stop asking me
No,
questions.
no.
I want to start interviewing you.
He's
Well, let's make this about you, Cyrus.
But he goes to a lot of rocket meets, and these guys, I mean, their
Doggone it.
culture
That's cool.
is they are into
You're
space.
right.
They've got the space statues around town.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like that here.
No, it's not. It is interesting, but I think it's a growing. Just as an example, to sort of give a sense of how fast it's catching on. Again, back to just a few years ago when we stood it up, there were plenty of people ridiculing us. I mean, there's a Space Force Netflix comedy, sick
Right.
comedy, right?
Right.
And so, but that they're not laughing so much anymore. Don't get me wrong. There's still plenty to have fun with, but when you talk to the recruiters, Air Force, Navy, Army,
Yeah.
they are all having trouble meeting their recruiting goals, but not the Space Force.
That's funny.
And
Yeah.
we go to the Air Force Academy where we, or ROTC. I've had the opportunity now, given my position, to bring both the first General J. Raymond, who was the first Chief of Space Operations, who was first mission was at the Grand Forks Air Force Base as a
In North Dakota.
right in North Dakota way back when, married his wife who he met at the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks, and so his first trip as chief was to Grand Forks. Brought him up to the University of North Dakota, did a round table, did a open forum, and then he was able to speak to ROTC students. And I did the same with General Dickinson, who's the commander of Space Command. And the president at the university said, "Do you realize that most of these kids never dreamt they'd meet a four-star general, much less two of them?" And what has happened, space is the cool kid right now in the
Yeah.
military, and so they're getting the top recruits out of the academies, out of ROTC, and remembering too that it's no longer, while it's under the Air Force, it's its own force, and so one of the reasons we stood up a Space Force was because while we're dominant in space, we're also sort of disparate in terms of how we applied the space mission. So Marines have space, sailors have space, Army has space, Air Force has space. We consolidate all that, and this was one of my first pitches. And I said this to every advocate: don't talk about it as a new force. Talk about it as an efficiency of existing talent into one, focused mission of space.
And it's an important thing to defend. I mean, like you said, basically our entire economy is based off of satellites and what we have, orbiting in space. It's a very creative way if another country wanted, to commit an act of war, just blow up some of our satellites.
So believe me, that's what the Space Force wakes up every day thinking about.
Yeah.
And how to defend that, making sure we can defend that. There was a doctrine early on that the White House was pushing that we would never have offensive weapons in space, in other words, there's no deterrent whatsoever. If you're going to take a position like that, while your enemies don't, you're already at a disadvantage. And so you raise a really, really important point. In fact, we've been at the cyber game for a long time. Right? And understand the importance of cybersecurity and the ability of somebody to, through an EMP or some other means, hack into our grid system, or all the ways that they could cripple us without firing a weapon, a nuclear weapon of some sort. Space provides that opportunity for sure.
Super interesting to me, and I know we spent over half of this on here, and maybe we can wrap it up with this. I think a lot of great ideas are ridiculed at first before they're come to be seen as, well,
True.
that was the obvious way to go. So maybe answer either one of these two questions. What do you think Space Force might look like 10, 20, 30 years from now, or how do you envision the future of Space
Yeah,
Force?
that is a great question. What I think, here's what I hope. What I hope is it doesn't get a lot, I hope it doesn't get a lot bigger. One of the blessings of starting a new force was, as I used to always say to Jay Raymond, and now I say to General Saltzman, you get a white sheet of paper and a big idea. Form a modern force. It doesn't have to be big, doesn't require a bureaucracy. That's extremely innovative. Take risks you wouldn't otherwise take, and I'll defend you rather than get you. And be that facilitator. Remembering again that while you need the force to train and equip the people you recruit, you're also, as much as anything, a facilitator of commands. And that shouldn't require so much quantities of people as qualities of people.
So more efficient.
A more efficient force. Remembering too that when you're talking about advanced technologies and innovations, whether it's hypersonic missiles, a hypersonic missile needs to be able to communicate as it circumvents the globe. Maybe I shouldn't say so much. But what the heck? You've already tipped them off. It needs to have that constant communication thing. So be innovative and efficient. Now, at the same time, when you have a need, bring it to Congress and make the case, and hopefully we would provide that need for the sake of the country and the world.
Senator, we know that you travel a lot, back and forth, North Dakota and Washington. It's a lot of travel. But when they start doing public, space travel trips, would you do it? Are you interested?
It's funny. Obviously, remember I mentioned that I'm from the center of the North American continent. I'm actually the ranking Republican on the Sea Power Subcommittee. Makes total sense, right? And I've never even spent a night on a submarine. Yeah, but not that I wouldn't do it.
Would you? Yeah.
I've been
Maybe not
invited.
after the ocean.
Well, I'd like our submarines a lot better.
Yes,
The
yes.
USS North Dakota is a wonderful
Yes.
Virginia-class submarine.
Yes.
But so would I don't know. It's funny you say that because it was as obviously involved as I am in the setting up of a Space Force and the advocacy of a Space Force and chairman of the caucus. Traveling to space doesn't really interest me.
I'm with you on that.
I'm with you.
My dad's actually with you on that
Is
too.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just watch from the.
It's cool,
I'll
but
watch from land.
Yeah, I don't need to do
Yeah,
it.
that's for other people. I'm not that brave.
Me neither.
I want to get back and see my grandchildren in my backyard.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some other things because we could just do space.
Sure,
I could
sure.
do space so long.
I can tell.
Let's talk about you were appointed the North Dakota Economic Director as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about something people might not think of when they think of North Dakota. Those in the know will. It is the number 3 oil producer in the U.S. behind only Texas and New Mexico. You got a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
we're only
oil.
behind New Mexico recently. The pandemic sort of put a kibosh to some of that. Yeah, we're a big oil producer, have been for several decades, but when Harold Hamm from Continental Resources did what we call crack the code of horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing, the Bakken in western North Dakota boomed. And we blew by several states, Alaska, California, Oklahoma.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and so we produce a lot of oil. We're well over 1 million barrels per day. We're up to about 1.5 million at our peak. So yeah, we're also a major electricity producer. We have a lot of coal mines. We also have a lot of wind. I was after economic development director in a stint in private sector. I went back as a public service commissioner. So I have a background in regulating energy for 10 years, energy and environment. So North Dakota is energy rich and natural resource rich for sure.
We've got about 4 minutes left. We always end up running out of time. Let's talk about, Sophie, you actually brought this up. I'd love to hear you talk about this one because let's get in as much as possible here.
Oh, the world's largest French fry?
Yes.
Oh, stop.
So I didn't realize this. I'm French, so we'll call them freedom fries.
Okay, thank you.
But North Dakota has the world's largest French fry feed, and it's held every year in Grand Forks during the Potato Bowl USA.
Yeah.
Is this something you're a fan of? Do you go?
Well, who doesn't love French fries, first
Right,
of all?
right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, and freedom fries.
Yes.
So Grand Forks is sort of the heart of potato country in the Red River Valley of the North. And the University of North Dakota, celebrates a potato bowl. They have a potato bowl parade. I've been in it many times. There are potato feeds all over town. I've participated in several of them. I love French fries. I love them. Simplot has a big, plant right there in Grand Forks. But I like baked potatoes. I like baked potatoes and all this stuff.
Over French fries?
Well,
I know it's
tough.
controversial.
it's a tough one. I mean, I think you'd have to lie to say you like a baked potato more than a French fry.
Yeah.
But remember, a baked potato, you can put chili,
Yeah.
barbecue,
Sour cream.
sour cream and broccoli.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah. No.
Chili,
As a connoisseur, can you say if you like crinkle cut fries or waffle fries or all fries?
No, I like the traditional French fry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Crispy, preferably. So I'd like it, a little extra in the boil
Maybe
boiling-
maybe a double dip.
double dip
Yeah.
in the boiling oil. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so that we can still have time to get some things in here. What draws people to North Dakota? Or, I mean, you were the tourism director.
I
Or what
was,
should
yeah.
they come see? And you definitely get football players to show up there.
We
'cause
sure
the
do.
Bison football has been a juggernaut.
Yeah, right. Bison football's great. 9 out of the last 11 national championships in NCAA won, FCS series. A lot of NFL players from North Dakota State University. A lot of them from North Dakota itself. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing to participate in. However, what I like the most about North Dakota is just how wide open it is. It's really the beginning of the West on the northern tier. When you leave Minnesota, you get into North Dakota. As you head west, you come to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, where President Roosevelt. It's the only national park named after a person.
State had a big influence on him.
It did have a big influence on him. Yeah, and
Look it up
he had,
online if
he had 2 ranches out there, and now the presidential library
Wow.
is being built there. So Theodore Roosevelt's presidential library will be at Medora, North Dakota,
Nice.
near the gateway to his national park. And so it's sort of an American legacy. It's the Kakawias from North Dakota, who and Lewis and Clark spent the most time of anywhere in North Dakota. They had the bad fortune of arriving in winter, and so they wintered in North Dakota on the Missouri River. So it's there are a lot of George Custer, General Custer, and he's not from there. He lived there until he made the fatal trip to Montana. But Sitting Bull is from North Dakota, and Sitting Bull, in my view, is like one of the greatest North Dakota patriots in history. And
Wow.
so I know some of his family members, and so yeah, it's kind of an America West.
If you like history and you like the
Yep,
outdoors,
yep.
there's a lot to
There's a
see,
lot
a
to
lot
see
to
there.
do there. Is
Yeah.
any of the Lewis and Clark Trail? Can you?
Yep. Oh, yeah. You can take it all. I mean, remembering the Lewis and Clark Trail is basically the Missouri
Yep.
River. So, what's interesting about the Missouri River, of course, it runs south like most rivers, although the Red River of the North that goes by Fargo and Grand Forks runs north. That said, the Missouri River flows south, but of course they went upstream in 1804 and then came back down in 1806. So when you think about that long ago in 1804, they were going upstream in, I guess, a 6-mile-per-hour current.
Brutal.
They found Sakakawea in North Dakota, who became their guide, of course. Her statue, along with her baby Pomp on her shoulder, blesses this place, the United States Capitol. So yeah, the Lewis and Clark. There's a wonderful Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center at Washburn, North Dakota. It's
Worth
definitely
checking out.
worth
It was
checking
more
out.
than a hike one way and another. I mean, it
Yeah,
was dangerous. And
it
you
was.
spend time out in the wild and you start to get a real appreciation for it.
What a pitch. I'm sold.
Are you? Come
We'll
on out.
visit.
Come on out. I have a whole bunch of people coming out in a couple weeks. Over 50 guests from Washington D.C. coming out to Medora,
Wow.
North Dakota, in about 3 weeks to
For their
visit.
first visit?
Many of them.
Wow.
There's a core of about 5 or 6 of them that came up 3 years ago, and on my very first effort to have this event in Medora, and they've been the cheerleaders ever since. And 50 are coming this year.
Wow.
Senator, your staff is going to kill me. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm going to blame it on
Who
Sophie.
cares about them?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for
I'm
these.
tired of them pushing me around.
Any final words then? If you're in charge, anything like
Go west, young man, go west. Yeah. No,
Love it.
I will say I've really enjoyed being in the United States Senate. The founders were so wise when they created this. That was quite a
Agreed.
fight to decide what kind of they were going to have a unicameral legislature. What would it be? House of Lords, House of Commons, all that. That whole debate that led to the bicameral Congress. When I talk to young people from North Dakota, the fact that that I get to meet with you and you get to meet with me, I meet with all of them that come out here. It's just one of my rules. Gives disproportionate influence from you, because your peers in New York and California, Florida, Texas, they don't get to do this, nor do their senators get to do it like I do. And our founders were just so wise when they created this Senate. And I think about that every day in this job, what a blessing it is to come from a little bitty place in the middle of the North American continent where real people go to work every single day and provide for themselves and the country. And so I just give a pitch for small America.
It's great.
Senator, thank you for your time, and thank you for being today's The Elephant in the Room.
Glad to do it. Thank you.
We are one of the few places where you can hear your United States senators have conversations like this. If you'd like to hear more, all you have to do is like or preferably subscribe. That will ensure when our next episode comes out, Your podcast app will alert you. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you because U.S. Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming thought it would be a good idea to get to know our varied members. The idea was brought to him by Arjun Modi with the help of Carly Rapp, and Elena Seiler runs the show behind the scenes. Until next time, thanks for listening to The Elephant in the Room.
Bow, bow, da, 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 da.